Most of the hard work. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Indeed. And Lizzie is the daughter of the regimental sergeant major.
The Queen's Cup final polo match was held in Windsor this weekend, with the monarch herself in attendance, despite sporting an extremely bloodshot left eye. Close-ups of the Queen showed the infected eye. However, Buckingham Palace remained tight-lipped over its cause.
You know, the pedophilia is starting to be exposed everywhere. You know, that much is coming.
Oh, yeah. But you know the part that I don't want to talk about.
The controlling of governments, controlling of populations, the blood traumas, this occultism, the raping of children, the harvesting of children. All this has been going on for so long.
It was Christmas night, 1996, and inside this Colorado home, a murder took place that shocked the world.
JonBenet Ramsey.
It was JonBenet's murder.
JonBenet Ramsey.
In the 25 years she's been gone, there's been endless speculation about who did it.
JonBenet was killed accidentally during a pedophile sexual ritual.
Boulder police went to court today to try to keep secret the report of the autopsy performed on the body of JonBenet. They were opposed by lawyers representing news organizations.
Look, she had a torn hymen and she had vaginal bruising. That does not mean sexual abuse. It could be child molestation. I mean, she could have been masturbating. It could have been a bicycle.
To describe this story as horrifying would be an understatement. And if that sounds like a warning, then that's exactly what it's meant to be. It deals with the sexual abuse of children by satanic cults. And not only that, human sacrifices as well. We started investigating these secret satanic cults when a British Member of Parliament linked them with the ritual murder of children. In this day and age, it sounded too far-fetched, as did suggestions that the same thing might be happening in Australia. But then we met Teresa. She's only 15, and for 12 of those years, she's been the victim of relentless depravity. Teresa's story is both shocking and compelling, yet it's a story she's anxious to tell. But again, we should warn you that parts of this report may be distressing.
The controlling of governments, controlling of populations, the blood traumas, this occultism, the raping of children, the harvesting of children. All this has been going on for so long.
In 1957, I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family.
At that time, there's a criminal faction of our government that was interested in targeting children such as myself for mind control.
My victimization rose proportionately until I was used on a White House Pentagon level during the Reagan-Bush administration.
It was so hard to come running out of a hell that nobody believed existed.
I didn't know if the child was crazy or if there was just a lot of this and I was naive.
Well, the thing that you mentioned to me the last time I talked to you is that he was they drugged your child, I think.
Yeah, they had him drugged.
They had him drugged. So then you, under drugs, you can dress up like the bunny rabbit, you can dress up like an alien.
You're asking me if I think this is real? That have I finally seen a space alien? You know, I don't know. But I do know this. I know that this is not a tricked up version like the alien autopsy. It doesn't attempt to distract you away from the alien. It doesn't have that cinema verite, black and white. It doesn't go to great lengths to try to fool the audience. It's straight ahead. It's an alien on tape. Pretty much the way you'd probably film it.
Could the footage in this program be the world's first hard visual evidence of an actual living and breathing alien being? An alien being communicating in an interview with a highly covert arm of the US government? If the footage we're about to show you is genuine, then this could very well be the most important video in the history of mankind, proving once and for all that we are not alone.
In the past few days, I've been doing some research into a few different topics, which actually turned out to be connected. While doing this research, I came across some very interesting stuff, including a video which is said to have been filmed by the Department of Naval Intelligence. This video was given to a TV show by a guy who chose to remain anonymous, but called himself Victor. The interview took place in a mostly dark room, and Victor claims that this was for the comfort of the alien, which also links up with other information I've come across about how these entities don't like light.
You removed the soundtrack from the tape before you turned it over to this program.
That's correct. I can't allow the voices of the project personnel to be heard by the general public. There's a very good chance their family or friends on the outside might recognize them.
Isn't your purpose in releasing this tape to expose Area 51 to the world?
My purpose is to expose the existence of the aliens, not compromise these individuals. I made the decision to come forward. I'm taking precautions to protect my own identity, and I don't think it's fair for me to put these others in danger of exposure. In any case, the interview on the tape went nowhere. It was interrupted, as you'll see.
Can you describe for us what we're seeing?
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
Now, whether you believe aliens exist or not doesn't really matter. I, for example, don't believe in aliens. But that's only because I make it a point in my life to not believe in anything. I'm interested in the truth, and the truth requires no belief. So if aliens are real, which is possible considering how vast the universe is, then there's no need to believe in them because they're real. And if they aren't real, then whether you believe in them or not doesn't matter because, well, they are not real.
Retired from the Army, he is now a highly regarded UFO researcher and analyst. Dean was asked to view the tape and offer his expert opinion.
They're treating him like a piece of livestock, wiping his lips.
Calling on his own first-hand experience for comparison, Robert Dean was stunned and moved by what he saw.
That breaks my heart. I don't know how the hell you got this. I don't know who you got it from, and frankly, I don't want to know who you got it from. I would say, and I know that that's one of the things you ask of me, is that you've got yourself some legitimate footage of one of the little guys being interrogated and filmed. And there's a reality to it, and there's a sensitivity to it that literally breaks my heart.
Sean Morton looked for clues to the tape's authenticity in the technical details of the interview's setting.
Okay, there's a couple of interesting things about the tape right off the bat.
Morton tried to decipher the time code at the bottom of the screen.
First off, what you're looking at in the time code is DNI's Department of Naval Intelligence. So Department of Naval Intelligence, this would probably be a file number 27. It could be a security level, however, because security levels are supposedly go up to Q36, or the highest ones that we know about. The first interesting thing about that is that I'm noticing what looks like a medical monitor, and look at how slowly and erratic the heartbeat is. The heartbeat is literally 1, 2. It's very, very erratic, and it looks as though the heartbeat being as erratic as it is only about, from counting that, it looks like it's about 30 a minute or so.
Morton suggested an alternate explanation for the video's dim lighting.
One of the unusual things about most of these particular race of aliens is they are very, very sensitive to light. So a lot of these interviews are conducted in very darkened rooms.
To Morton's eye, many features of this alien dovetailed with accounts of other first-hand contactees.
Another strange thing about the physiognomy of these creatures is, as well, is if you will notice that the neck itself is not at the back of the head like a human being is. The neck is actually in the center of the head, which is what actually gives it problems holding its head and its neck up. Whatever this is, it's being taken. The interview is actually being done through a piece of glass, which is probably something somebody faking the photographs probably wouldn't think about.
So naturally, after watching that video, the question is it real? While looking more into this topic, I came across a guy who used to be really high up in the US Navy called William Tompkins, and he wrote a book called Selected by Extraterrestrials.
In 2015, this gentleman died in his 90s just a few months ago after a fall. In 2015, this man, William Mills Tompkins, wrote this book, Selected by Extraterrestrials, in which he describes how he was seconded into a top-secret American naval intelligence operation based at the massive naval base in San Diego. And this group he was seconded into in 1942 was to work and study and uncover the extraterrestrial presence and activities around the world, and to interact with some of those of different extraterrestrial races that were in some way benevolent to humans. And I'd written all about this reptilian thing and many other things long before he came out with this book. And he does produce pictures and documentation to show that he was with the people he says he was with, and he did have access to things he said he did. And what he said in this book, it obviously, knocked me over with a feather. He said that every world government is controlled by what he calls the reptilians.
Reptilian? Amazing. No, not really. Listen, this could have happened right here on Earth. What? Look, up to 60 million years ago, the reptiles ruled the Earth. Then, bam, a meteor. A big one, punched a hole right through the crust. It sent up dust, heat.
Iridium.
That's right, iridium.
Now, some of you are thinking, oh no, we're going off the deep end here with David Icke and the reptilians.
America, take a good look at your beloved candidates. They're nothing but hideous space reptiles.
Never mind that the devil is depicted as a serpent in the Bible, and many ancient cultures speak of dragons and lizard people. In fact, one of the most intriguing traditions to look at is that of the so-called Gnostics, who believed in the Christ while deriving much of their lineage from the Magi of ancient Persia.
Everything they teach you in school is a lie. You want the truth? The world is controlled by shadowy elites and shape-shifting lizard people.
So the song Shake It Off was about how I shed my skin every 1,000 years. And the song Bad Blood was about how I drink blood out of my Grammys.
A toast to blood.
And I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke, man. You know what I mean? For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on. You know, and they get out there in the woods in a circle naked and they decide these things and, you know, and look at him trying to cover it up. It's hilarious.
You notice the media doesn't even make jokes about me saying this because it's a cult. It's a satanic, anti-human, off-world cult.
The fear and the anti-human rhetoric has stayed with us.
The aliens don't attack in flying saucers like Mars attacks. They're here. It's interdimensional. Every ancient religion told you. The Bible spells it out extremely clearly. We are dealing with a fallen, off-world species that is parasitic and is seeking to use us because we're actually more advanced. We just don't know it. They intend to merge with humans and then jump off-world. We are their escape pod. Now that's the big secret. That's what they don't want you to know. That's why all this is happening.
He predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union, described the rise of the internet, and foretold the year a computer would beat a chess champion.
The singularity is near. What does singularity mean?
When you say the singularity is coming, what does that mean exactly?
There won't be a clear distinction between humans and machines.
Our computers are not going to be these rectangular devices we put in our pocket. They're going to be inside our bodies and brains, and we're going to be a hybrid of biological and non-biological intelligence.
The blood sacrifices, the whole Luciferian thing, the kids being killed and eaten. I mean, that humans have been eaten and taken off the planet, et cetera, and used for slaves in other colonies, etc.
I hate to say that, but that's far worse than what you've just said.
It's far worse.
Yes, far worse.
But again, we should warn you that parts of this report may be distressing.
Friends of the family and strangers and my family used to rape me, make me abort the babies I had.
It would be hard to imagine more misery and suffering than what Teresa says she's had to endure.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals, and then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice, were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
On what scale do you think this was happening?
Enormous, far beyond what we've ever heard of here before.
Teresa's mother, Bridget.
You're talking about mass murder?
Yes, on a scale that this country's never heard of before. Like the old people's homes now, only these.
The whole blood situation is, it's unbelievable. And I don't know how we say that to the public. To me, if we get into that, and I know all about it, okay?
All right.
Far more than you know.
Sure.
All right?
I'm sure.
When we get into that, if we release it, 70–80% of everybody that listens to your program is going to say, you're smoking pot. I don't believe that. And I don't believe anything you people talk about on extraterrestrial. And it's going to kill. That's my opinion.
You know the pedophilia is starting to be exposed everywhere. You know that much is coming out.
Oh, yeah. But You know the part that I don't want to talk about.
With locks and restraints and leather chest harnesses. The children's photos weren't the only part of the campaign that sparked backlash. In one image, a Balenciaga handbag is featured atop a scattering of documents. One of the papers appears to be from the 2008 Supreme Court case United States versus Williams, which involved a man who offered to exchange child sexual abuse materials online with other users. Balenciaga issued an apology on Instagram for both the BDSM campaign images and inclusion of the controversial court document.
Elijah Wood's shocking allegations against the entertainment industry. In a new interview with the Sunday Times, the former child star alleges that pedophilia has been a real issue in Hollywood. He tells the publication, quote, "There are a lot of vipers in this industry, people who only have their own interests in mind. What bums me about these situations is that the victims can't speak as loudly."
It was Christmas night, 1996, and inside this Colorado home, a murder took place that shocked the world.
JonBenet Ramsey.
The JonBenet's murder.
JonBenet Ramsey.
JonBenet Ramsey was just 6 years old when she died. In the 25 years she's been gone, there's been endless speculation about who did it. Some say it was her mother.
This JonBenet was killed accidentally during a pedophile sexual ritual.
Boulder police went to court today to try to keep secret the report of the autopsy performed on the body of JonBenet. They were opposed by lawyers representing news organizations.
Look, she had a torn hymen and she had vaginal bruising. That does not mean sexual abuse. It could be child molestation. I mean, she could have been masturbating. It could have been a bicycle. There could have been lots of stuff.
Okay.
It's not sexual abuse. Don't prove it.
Well, okay. Well, I'll take it back to this extent, Larry. It could be.
Bankers, politicians, and all kinds of successful people whose decisions actually impact your life are part of secret societies. This is one of the secrets they keep, and it's why they engage in rituals where, believe it or not, they drink blood and do all kinds of insane stuff.
My name is Annika Lucas. I am a mom, and I'm currently the leader of an organization that brings yoga into prisons. I'm also a survivor of child sex trafficking. I was raised in Belgium and sold into a murderous pedophile network right around my 6th birthday. I was used in this network for 5 years and a half. Adult men that were part of this exclusive club were there for various reasons, but there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, and the children were the commodity, the highest, the most valued commodity, and were used for sex mostly.
Saying as much as you said right now is actually great.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you basically are, anyone who's hearing everything else you say is going to have to come to home with this. And if they want to know more, it's out there. It's more and more, it's out there.
Yeah.
According to Roman and Greek historians, it was common practice among Phoenician aristocrats to bring their virgin daughters to the temple when they reached the age of puberty.
The girls had to go to the temple of Astarte and stay there and be lain with strange men.
The high priest would then force them to have sex with visiting foreigners who paid the temple handsomely for the privilege.
The stranger was viewed as an emissary from the gods. After intercourse, the girl had made herself holy in the sight of Astarte and went away home.
So these very young girls were actual prisoners until...
In 1994, 60 children at Ariel School in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, said that they'd seen a UFO and aliens with big eyes in bushland near the school playground.
Hundreds of people today phoned the ZBC and BBC correspondent in Harare saying they sighted an unidentified flying object last night.
These things were flying in a pattern and there was no sound.
It was a bright, radiant light. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
I was making a film on UFOs, and I dismissed it so quickly because I thought, there's no way that a mass landing
with the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony at a school in broad daylight could happen and the whole world not know about it. So I just walked away from that story for about 10 years.
There's been a UFO alert across southern Africa.
This is a continuation of possible UFO story.
A large, brightly coloured object was seen travelling very fast above Zimbabwe, Zambia and South Africa.
I saw something silver on the ground amongst the trees.
Could you tell me what you saw on Friday?
There was a man, and he walked towards us and he walked back again.
You don't think it was somebody in fancy dress doing a prank or something?
So here's what we know about UFOs. The U.S. government has verified they're real, in the sense there are objects moving in the sky that we cannot identify. They're certain they do not belong to a foreign nation. They're not from Russia or from China. And third, we know that these objects are moving in ways that we cannot replicate, explain, or even understand. So everyone who's studied this in the U.S. government will admit that privately. No one has really said that out loud, and that may change very soon. So for the first time in half a century, there will be a public hearing on UFOs. A House Intelligence Subcommittee will hear from 2 senior Pentagon officials tomorrow on what the Defense Department actually knows about these objects. The Pentagon and intel agencies are reportedly feuding tonight on how much the public should know.
Could it be that the reason why the government has always tried to deny their existence is because these entities are the ones who actually control the world and all the world governments?
Wake up, sheeple! The evidence is right here!
Gary and Mary Ruth, we've been working on this story for a long time, and we'll tell you right up front that it's going to be hard to swallow at first. This week, we've heard the contention of UFO researchers that there's a secret government within our government. While that may be hard to believe coming from the UFO perspective, we've certainly learned in Watergate and the Iran-Contra scandal that factions within our government can and do pursue their own hidden agendas outside of the law, outside the control of Congress, or the knowledge of the American people. This is exactly the type of operation we'll hear about tonight. It's a chilling scenario with worldwide implications.
You know, there are a lot of people, myself included, who would like to focus on big picture stuff. Who are these visitors? Why are they here? What is the nature of reality? What is their interest in us? Where do they come from? Now, those are the questions that people have been asking about the UFO mystery since the beginning. We're no closer to answering any of them, but Bob got pretty close. Bob got to read these briefing documents that provided those kind of answers. The thing is, when we were covering his story, so much of the effort was in proving that he really was the person he said he was. Is it true? Is it plausible? That really, that was the focus, more than the really important stuff. You have to cover the story of Bob Lazar, and the only way to do that is to talk to Bob.
Lazar's story is by any standards fantastic. He says he's telling it in order to protect himself. He says he was hired to work at an area called S4, which is a few miles south of Groom Lake. At S4, he says, are flying saucers, antimatter reactors, and other working examples of technology that is seemingly beyond human capabilities.
Right, this came from somewhere else. I mean, as bizarre as that is to believe, but I mean, it's there, I saw it. I know what the current state of the art is in physics, and it can't be done.
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators, a half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It too mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at, past job, and essentially nothing comes up with my name in it.
He smiles, but out of futility, knowing the whole thing must sound ridiculous. Polygrapher Terry Tavernetti runs a corporate security operation and is a former Los Angeles police officer. He put Lazar through 4 tests and concluded there was no attempt to deceive.
And I left there thinking that
I feel we do have some credibility to what the subject had to say.
Well, I am telling the truth. I've tried to prove that. What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about contact, physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
And it's real.
And it's real and it's there. And I had an extremely small part in it, but I'm convinced that what I saw is absolute proof of that. There is no way we could have created those systems. There's no way we could have made the disks, the power supplies, anything to go with them.
Now the question is, if these kind of entities are real, then who are they? And why are they here? Why have they been observing humanity for hundreds, if not thousands of years, without revealing themselves?
The description of your abduction clearly is describing what has become known as the Greys, what I think is also known by some as the Ant People, the grey figures with the big black eyes. How do you think they connect in with the openly reptilian? And do you think that the black covers of the eyes are covering some kind of reptilian truth?
Sir, the so-called grey aliens are actually the lackeys and the servants of the Chitauri. If you see a Chitauri and you see this, there is very little racial difference. In fact, I will even go so far as to say this, that these creatures are actually the offspring of the Chitauri. And if you are very close to one of these creatures and you look into its goggle-like eyes, you will see round eyes, Mr. Ike, beyond this black goggle-like stuff. And these eyes are the real creature's eyes.
This guy, Carl Sagan, the cosmologist, he wrote about, in great detail, about the impact of reptilian genetics upon humans and human behavior. And he wrote this book, The Dragons of Eden, going back to history and the talk of dragons and the reptilian and stuff, but also the reptilian genetics that is within all of us. Fundamental part of the human body, the human hologram, is reptilian genetics. And as this guy said, understanding the reptilian background to the human body, or the human being as he called it, is to understand so much about human behavior. The oldest part of the human brain is called the R complex by scientists, short for reptilian brain, because of the reptilian input that we've had in our body development. Now, there are other parts of the brain that balance out the characteristics of the reptilian brain, but if you have an infusion of greater reptilian genetics, you are going to have, obviously, a greater infusion of the characteristics of the reptilian genetics. And this is mainstream science when they're talking about the reptilian brain.
It's the animal part of us, and therefore always tends to see things half empty.
From there, we get primitive emotional responses, cold-blooded behavior, and territoriality, as they call it. This is mine. I own it. I control it. A desire to control, an obsession with hierarchical structures of power, aggression, might is right, winner takes all, come from the reptilian brain. And they are absolutely the characteristics of the Illuminati families.
The Queen's Cup final polo match was held in Windsor this weekend, with the monarch herself in attendance, despite sporting an extremely bloodshot left eye. Close-ups of the Queen showed the infected eye. However, Buckingham Palace remained tight-lipped over its cause.
the expectation is to act very dignified and proper around the Queen. But of course, sometimes nerves get the better of you. Check out 9-year-old Nathan, who was meeting Queen Elizabeth yesterday. You see, he's going to look at his face. He looks petrified.
That kid right in the middle there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's with his parents, David and Carrie, who are former Fame Academy judges. So here comes the Queen. Let's just watch this happen.
We're going to present the ceremony for us today. We're hosting today. This is our adoptive son.
Helt annan tid, eller hur? Du kolla. Är han naken? Så. Riktigt.
And say, in some places in Southern Africa, if you wanted to learn the secrets of a certain secret society, you had to do dreadful things which I cannot repeat here. And at one time, in Barotseland, in the west of what is today Zambia, my teacher said, look, how far are you willing to go in order to become one of us? I said, I am willing to go anywhere. He looked at me and he said, listen, educated man, we are tired of people like you. White men come amongst us to milk our minds and then to kill us. We want to be sure that we can trust you. And wait, sir. I said, great one, I am willing to do anything. He said, are you? I said, yes. And then they went into a graveyard, and from there they removed the hand of a corpse, dead 2 days, and they brought it and they challenged me to cook it and eat it. I did so. And these were the peoples who first told me about a race of highly intelligent beings, which they called the Chitauri, the talkers, a race of creatures which look like reptiles, who have ruled the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Through this dreadful act, I was able to gain knowledge which was denied to even the highest Sangomas, because they would not go through the ritual I went through.
You look at the recurring themes of dragons and reptilian monster figures in myths and stories. They go on and on and on. And of course,
the Anunnaki have been described in several different ways. Most commonly, they're depicted as tall, bearded men, and sometimes there are women and children depicted as well. However, they sometimes are interpreted to have been crocodile-like in nature, or with reptilian features. If you're familiar with a lot of New Age ideas, you might have heard of the idea of reptilians. Many proponents of the reptilian theory suggest that these beings are actually shapeshifters as well, and can change their form at will, which is why there are different depictions of them throughout history.
These people know that the body is a biological computer. So to them, that's how they look at it. What we call procreation is the downloading of two hard drives, if you like, into one, which creates the offspring. To these people, they see that as a downloading of a computer program. And so the obsession, and this is real, goes right back to the ancient world, right up to the present day, the obsession that these bloodlines have, take royalty, aristocracy, and the major banking and business families of the world, they interbreed incessantly, and always have. And it's because, from their point of view, they are holding a software program, which is what? Information. It's a state of being. And when you interbreed that, these hybrid bloodlines, with the general population, that, to them, unique software program, computer program, starts to dilute very, very quickly. So what they're trying to do is hold that software, hold that information within the computers by interbreeding with each other.
Throughout human history, different cultures around the world have talked about non-human entities coming to Earth and giving them knowledge about all kinds of stuff. This kind of knowledge is how they were able to build unexplainable structures like the Great Pyramid and other sites all around the world. Even the Bible talks about when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men and had children with them. And these beings who were technologically advanced were believed to be the gods by the human races because of the kind of things they were able to do with their technology.
There are people who claim that these creatures are gods.
What if it were true? Did ancient aliens really help to shape our history? And does it help to explain our continuing fascination with stories of gods and heroes?
There are people who claim that these creatures are experimenting on us. That is a lot of rubbish. These creatures are harvesting us. These creatures are not aliens, Mr. Ike. These creatures are sexually compatible with our women. And what does that tell you? It tells you that they came from here. They are part of us. And this makes them all the more dangerous. They know us very, very, very well. They know the great weaknesses of our minds, just as they know the great strengths of our minds.
Some cultures around the world today still worship these beings as gods.
The oldest form of religion and worship so far established is serpent worship. It's massive. It goes right back. 70,000 years ago is the oldest evidence in South Africa of serpent worship. And after I'd written a book called The Biggest Secret, when I introduced this for the first time, I went to speak in South Africa, and I met this man, Credo Muchwa, who contacted the organizers of my event and said, I want to talk to this man. So I went to see him, and I spent days with him in the end. And he first said to me, he said, Mr. David, he said, how do you know about the Chitahuri? And I said, well, who are they? He said, they are the children of the serpent, the children of the python. That's what Chitahuri translates as. And he told me that when the colonial powers came into Africa, as everywhere else, they targeted the shaman and the carriers of the ancient knowledge and the ancient history of that area, and in his words, they milked the minds of the shaman and then killed them. So to keep the knowledge alive, the shaman streams started to create their own secret societies with horrendous initiation rituals to make sure you really wanted the knowledge.
They went into a graveyard, and from there they removed the hand of a corpse, dead 2 days, and they brought it and they challenged me to cook it and eat it.
And they carried it underground so it would survive Because what the colonial powers wanted, in other words, these bloodlines behind the colonial powers, they wanted to destroy as much of the ancient knowledge as possible, because then they could impose their own version of history, which would write out what they didn't want people to know. So, about, what is he now, 90? Crikey. 60 years ago, nearly, he was initiated into these secret societies in South Africa, and that's when he learned about the Chitahuri, and he's gone on learning ever since. That is a painting. He's a brilliant man. He's a library on legs. That's one of his paintings of one kind of the Chitahuri, as he calls them. There are many different types, as there are different types of human. And he showed me this, what he calls the necklace of the mysteries. It's mentioned 500 years ago in accounts. He reckons it's at least 1,000 years old, and he calls it a necklace. You put it on your shoulders. Oh my God, it's so heavy. And he sits there for hours with it. I don't know how he does it. And what he does, because he's the official storyteller of the Zulu nation, what he does is use these symbols to tell the story of Africa, the people of Africa. And right at pride of place at the front is a human woman and a very clearly non-human man with a big willy in come and get me mode. And interestingly, he says that was originally gold. And then someone stole it and they couldn't replace it with gold, so they replaced it with copper. But then again, this is Southern Africa. You go to North Africa, and one of the key foundation stories and myths of ancient Egypt is of the golden penis of Osiris. And the more and more that I see this, these are symbolic of this bloodline, of this connection, this hybrid bloodline connection. That's the lady. And here's the guy. Now, he doesn't look very reptilian. I pointed that out to him. And he said, this is the story. The Chitahuri, when they were manifesting openly in some areas, said, you must never portray us as we really are, otherwise death.
So why are the depictions of the gods, if they were reptilian, why are they not constantly reptilian? Why are they symbolized in other forms?
Because it is very, very, very forbidden to portray a Chitauli as it really is.
Well, let's connect this into the present day. And one thing that is a constant recurring theme is the reptilians or an extraterrestrial race interbreeding with humanity and creating particular bloodlines. And you've got an amazing artifact, I guess that's the word, necklace. Now, first of all, where did this come from?
Sir, we don't know. This necklace has been around for so long that we don't exactly know from which tribe it came. All I can tell you is that this necklace was in existence when the king who founded the Zulu nation, Zulu, was still a boy. It is called Inweba Yezimfihlo, the necklace of the mysteries. It is really a book which tells 12 different stories. Inside here are stones which are not from this earth. It is a very amazing story. There are 3 pebbles in here which stories say were brought to this earth by an alien baby which played with a human baby in the northern Transvaal. These gods came down to the earth in great vessels made out of gold, and they united with female human beings to create a race of kings and queens on our earth. There isn't a tribe, Mr. Ike, anywhere in Africa. And when you return to South Africa, I will ask you to investigate this very closely. There isn't a tribe anywhere in Southern, Central, Western, and Eastern Africa which doesn't claim that kingship was a system that was brought down from the sky by gods who either traveled in swings, as the pygmies of Zaire say, or who came down in huge vessels which were shaped like bows, vessels made of gold, vessels bigger than mountains. I wish to share these things with you, sir, as briefly as I can. The Zulu people believed that they originated from space, and their name Zulu does not mean sky, but rather interplanetary space. And the word Zulu also has to do with traveling. Now I ask you, how did a land-bound people like the Zulus know that you could travel in space? We are Zula, Ezulwini. You can travel in the great place of traveling. For that matter, Zulu people knew that the earth was a sphere and that it was the sun that was still in space and the various planets orbited around it.
This is a symbolic image by Neil Haig of this hybrid bloodline, which has we all have, and I'll come to this, we all have reptilian genetics, very, very serious reptilian genetics within the body hologram computer, but these hybrid bloodlines have much more reptilian genetics and therefore have much more of the reptilian genetic personality. And around the world, again, it's like, have you seen that new car? No, and you see them everywhere. Again, once this reptilian thing came into my life, I started to realize just how much reptilian imagery there is everywhere, all over the world. And the ancient myths and stuff like that of the Nagas in Asia, the people who were said to be part reptilian, part human, and could move between the two. And the many images you find portrayed of this coming together of Earth women and this reptilian race, and part human, part non-human, and all the rest of it. These are just a few examples that have been sent to me from around the world, but crikey, there's loads and loads of them that portray the same basic symbol of, again, fighting the snake, fighting the dragon is all part of it. And of course, one of the key stories in the Bible is of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which, when you read that story in the way it's portrayed, absolutely changed the way that humans acted and saw themselves in the world. When you see the symbolic way that it's talked about. And I was on a Christian radio station in America a few months back, and they say, oh no, serpents and all that. I said, well, hold on a second. Do you think that if you believe the Garden of Eden story, and again, the Garden of Eden story told in different ways using different names, you can find that all over the world as well. Same recurring theme. And I said, do you really think that if you believe it to be, that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was a snake on the ground? Did you know? Could you think it could be that could be symbolic of something? And it's just another example of the reptilian symbolism all over the place. And when you look at the castles and the stately homes of these bloodlines in the aristocracy, and also in the churches as well, and they're behind them, and they were behind the building of them, the structure, certainly at this level, goes further out up to that schism, I believe, but at this level, you've got the reptilian entities, and Nephilim, that was the name of the hybrid bloodline in the Bible, the Nephilim. Just one of many, many names that they're called around the world in different cultures. But the reptilian entities possess their hybrid stooges. And the secret society network within this reality manipulates the stooges and their gophers and agents into the positions of power at the top of the pyramids in all these different countries. These are the subsidiary networks I'm talking about. They then control all these other things like politics, finance, media, military, religion, and the royal networks, because that locks into them. And then down come the people. And these people at the top, who appear in everyday reality and on the news bulletins, often to be at odds with each other and fighting each other. There's lots of infighting goes on among these people because they're so imbalanced that they're going to fight for them among themselves, but there is a level that knocks heads together when it gets in the way. And so they're manipulating, playing different countries and groups and Islamic and stuff off against each other. And if you notice, the people that declare the wars never bloody fight them. These people go off like silly sods and fight them. And these people who have nothing against these people, but those people tell them they should, and all the rest of it, and the people fight among themselves, creating great stress, great disharmony, energy to be absorbed and all the rest of it, because they're manipulated by the tiny few into this stuff.
Amazing. In the end, I guess the point of this video is to show that reality is nothing like we've been conditioned to think it is. Maybe the interview with the alien isn't real, or maybe it actually is. I don't know. And maybe all this stuff I covered in this video is made up nonsense that's been repeated for thousands of years by ancient cultures around the world. But the point that the world is nothing like we think it is remains.